Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 2 of The Boys Presents Diabolical. A great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Which, I love the whole thing. Obviously, it's Justin Roiland style, like art style, and just approach to the episode. It's interesting to, picking up on, last episode about, testing out babies and stuff like that. We kind of get, the more adult version of that. Not really answering questions. Kind of brought up, theoreticals about, how that would operate in this universe, but still kind of in that same vein of, okay, so what happens in this particular case is what happens if your kid has a terrible power that isn't one of the cool superpowers, so they get shipped off to this place like Ghost or Kingdom, who can turn into animals, so he's kind of very Beast Boy-esque, but when he becomes those animals, he literally becomes those animals, mind and all, so not something controllable. Was it Beatbox, Tit Face, what was the one that comes ranch is that's kind of self-explanatory, along with Tit Face. There's also the one that kind of has the heated, the scolding nuts, and you feel bad for that guy because you can see his hands are scarred and burned as well as his thighs, and he has to kind of walk around almost crab-like with how his legs are spread. So it's kind of messed up to know that there's a facility where people can just jump off. It's almost like a superpowered orphanage of it's you're not wanted, and obviously the news coming out about Compound V. I like that because once again it's not canonical, but you can almost see it as right, here are other instances of people finding out wait, we were made this way. I love that it was also we got that flashback because there's someone there called Flashback. So they're going off, and we find out the narrator is someone with powers too. I love the aesthetic and approach to this. Obviously, once again, very Rick and Morty, but it's just very Justin Roiland style in that regard. I love the title card thing too of some pissed off soups go and kill off their parents, and it's it's kind of weird that I'm going to butcher it, but it was basically it's kind of weird that we waited this long into the episode. The episode's almost over, and it's weird that we waited till now to basically drop the title card, but who cares? We can do whatever we want. I love it. I was that's so good. And so each one of them is trying to track down their parents, and I love the breakdowns of all the different deaths. Animal putting blood on his parents so that when he turns into a shark, he eats them because he'll give into his animal instinct. And then Mo Slow choking his dad in slow motion. And I love his dad being you're trying to kill me. Okay. Getting a little tight. This is painful. The moment he was talking, I was is that Kanan? And it totally was. A lot of well-known people, because funny enough, I looked at it, it's Caleb, I'm going to probably butcher it, McLaughlin, interesting timing, Stranger Things, who played Lucas in Stranger Things, he plays Mo Slow. Poor guy. That's kind of a terrible power. They also go and visit the doctor because they ended up finding all their parents because they went to the doctor who had our names, which is the dude who voices Gene from Bob's Burger. And I love that, Human Tongue is her name, because she's nothing but a giant human tongue, ended up strangling him, and it's papers, and he's yeah, you're probably wondering why I wasn't there in the previous scene, but I was here the entire time, and he's trying to summon all the papers, because he can find all the papers anywhere, but it's cool, doesn't really work in this case, because it's there's a lot of papers in this room, is that it? Oh, no, that's a grocery list, but they ultimately find it, he's you most likely found it because you heard the paper rustling because of my power, so, and then once again, they went off to proceed to kill their parents. Aga is voiced by Zolo, who's obviously, I've not watched Cobra Kai, but he's also going to be Jaime Reyes in the Blue Beetle movie, so I was interesting timing on that front. That kind of sucks that he's just kind of liquid. I guess you can't even return to human form, which almost makes me think almost like a Wonder Twin thing of Wonder Twin in the form of an eagle or a bucket of water. So it kind of makes me think of that a little bit, but it's that just sucks. It's no, you're just liquid all the time. Tongue, human tongue strangling her parents and squishing them and making them pop. What was another one? Oh yeah, the dude with the heated nuts. Like, is it triggered by something? Didn't he have to eat a hot shrimp first, and that ended up heating up his nuts, and he just like sat his nuts on his dad, and ended up killing him in that regard. And then obviously, like, the centerfold of all of this is Ghost, who had, interesting enough, her mom is voiced by, the dad's Gary Anthony Williams, and the mom is Retta, which I was like, oh, that's dope. But regardless, her being kind of like the more focused one, and I love that it's like, oh, she's here after her parents, and everyone's there. I love Papers making like some paper shurikens being like, Papers! And they're all surrounded, you know, because she can't feel or touch anything. So, yeah, this is a god-awful experience for all of them. It's like, yeah, finding out, like, oh, yeah, your family got rid of you because of, you know, so finding out your parents, you know, did this to you would mess everyone up. I mean, we saw the reactions in the show. I didn't really talk about it, but it's like, yeah, you saw the reactions in the show, but they're not nearly the extreme that these are. These are obviously the more extreme examples of that, because at least those people, like Starlight or whatever, ended up having a family. Obviously, you have your Homelanders who have their own jacked up, fucked up, complications when it comes to upbringing, which we'll talk about Homelander in a second. I didn't even talk about Titface, voiced by Kevin Smith. That was pretty dope. And I love, like, oh wow, she takes care of dogs and stuff. Are we in the right place? Hey, flashback. So is why this lady deserves it. And then we see it, and it's just like her like knitting like a sprawled out like dead dogs like insides and stuff. And she's like, oh Jesus, kill the bitch. And Titface just like shoots her, and it's like, oh, the dog jumps out, licks his tits, and just like squirts milk everywhere. It was like, ugh. But going back to it, I wonder, could Ghost always possess someone, or did she just... It seemed like it might have just been a thing of she possessed Moslow in that moment because she wanted to feel like she was the one. It was her way to kind of feel like she was doing it. I couldn't really tell whether she was actually controlling him and making him... So maybe she's never really been able to really control... we never saw in the episode, obviously, whether she could possess people or not, but I'm curious whether or not that was just her, like, oh, I needed to feel like I'm the one doing it, and it going in his mouth slow, and just like, ugh, and then it just goes in deeper and slices his tongue off. And then they're surrounded, and lo and behold, who's there? Homelander, who immediately kills everyone except for Ghost, because Ghost can't be hit or touched or killed. So it's like, how do you even deal with that? Is there any way to deal with that? And she's just like, I love you too, Mom. I'll be back for you someday, and bounces. And obviously, Vault spins it the way they do. It's like, oh my god, Homelander was able to save the day when all this, how did they explain it? It was like it wasn't what it was. It was just, to cover it up, it was like, oh, like an explosion killed a whole bunch of people or something like that. Right, the wife of a husband that died during an explosion. So I'm sure they covered up all the other... They probably made it seem like, oh, these were random crimes or something. Like, they probably covered it up so they wouldn't know, like, oh, like, these children were abandoned. Like, they're already probably in recovery mode. Once again, if you want to think of it mainline continuity, Edgar's doing his spin to kind of put Vought more in a positive light. While, like, they're free-falling because of the whole Compound V thing. To be fair, they were, like, making all of it fall on Madeline's dead shoulders anyway, so... But, just the whole... Very Darth Vader-esque. Once again, I've never seen Rogue One, but I know the thing. You know, like, yeah, the ending of, like, Darth Vader literally showing up and killing everyone. Very, very Darth Vader Rogue One-esque moment at the end there. But apparently, Ghost went back and told everyone, I mean... Granted, what do you do about, like, the other, like, major superpowered people? I mean, I guess, well, because we know Narrator went off and killed his parents, so they probably continue doing it. It's probably they just kept it super low-key. It's like, right, we don't want to give anyone the opportunity to bring Vault into this. I'm surprised Vault didn't immediately send people there to kill everyone in that facility just so they wouldn't have the opportunity to sneak out and kill someone. But Narrator's whole thing, that was brutal. He's like, oh, I just took a spoon, which he's voiced by Christian Slater to do. It's just so crazy to hear his voice come out of that character doing all this. But it's like, oh, took a spoon and shoved it inside of his chin and then scooped his face off and then put his face on and then talked to myself in the mirror saying like, oh, I love you and I'm proud of you, son. I was like... That's fucked up, and that's so disturbing. It's also like, kind of like a very sad ending, but a lot of them probably would have preferred that, you know, because it's like, right, this existence they're living in is a hell. So it's like, oh, it's funny, but it's so dark and fucked up, it's sad. It's not even just like funny, it's like, it just kind of makes you a little sad to know that. Also for Ghost too, it's like, oh, these are my friends, and they're gone. Which they would have preferred it. Even she would prefer, because she can't even die. So it's just like, I don't even know if she'd be able to age or whatever. That sucks. Like, oh, you could be hungry, but you can never eat or taste it. So it's not like she probably can starve to death either. So, because she can't eat anyway. So it's like, I don't know if she can even age. It just seems like it probably has it the worst out of anybody just because of that very existence. But, you know, grass is greener always on the other side type of situation, right? So very, very, very interesting, and once again, darkly funny, but also darkly sad episode. But yeah, really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.